Welcome to another edition of the Intrigue Podcast. Right alongside the good doctor herself, Dr. Ellen Wald. As always, Dr. Wald, how's it going in sunny Florida?
It's finally sunny again after our hurricane experience this past week.
Yeah, y'all have hurricanes all the time now. I don't even track it anymore. It's like hurricanes and alligators. That's all y'all have. Did you see the monster alligator on Twitter on the golf course? Is that real?
I assume so.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, I have yet. Okay, the only place I have seen an alligator in real life was there's like this like wildlife place in the Everglades,
Yeah.
which is basically billed as come here and you can see alligators. And I saw some alligators. I have never seen one in like real life, like walking down the street, carrying a child's leg in its mouth.
When I lived in Louisiana, we'd, if you went to the right lakes and stuff, you would see them, of course. Not nearly as much as I guess you would in South Louisiana, but anyways, I saw that huge monster on the golf course. So, anyways, Miss Wald, let's talk a little bit about oil prices as they are up. Brent's up to 43.81, WTI is up to 41.24, and I am predicting. I'm going to go make a prediction. You can just write this down, put it on the books. This will happen. Price will drop. WTI will drop sub 35 before the end of the year.
Wow. Okay. Ryan, I think we're going to call this Ryan on the record.
Ryan on the record.
Okay.
Sub 35.
I'm good with the hashtags. WTI. I'm writing this down actually. Sub 35 before January 1.
Or January 1.
Or January 1. Okay.
Before. Yeah. So December 31st at, whatever.
Okay. And this is based on the fact that
we're seeing the shutdowns coming.
The shutdowns are coming. Shutdowns are coming, but apparently, and here's a question I've been wondering about all week ever since this vaccine stuff started, and maybe Dean Foreman, who is coming up on the podcast, has a good answer for this. But the question is, so we're looking at oil prices, and these are the prices for the contract for Brent and WTI for like this month, right, or next month. Like there's an actual like date when that contract ends, and we go to the next month's contract. The vaccine ain't coming out this month,
right,
or next month.
Right.
So why are we seeing this like future optimism reflected in this month's or next month contract?
Well, if you look ahead, I'm looking ahead right now. So if you look to the end of next year, that's at $42 right now is the contract for a year and a month from now. Mm-hmm. 42 and change. And so I think I think you're getting the old pump and dump, get it up a little bit and then
pump and dump.
Then shave off the price. I mean, obviously it's a big market, but I don't know. I think the market just is reacting to optimism. There was a headline we covered on Textual Guest podcast. It was like 25,000 people went to the food bank this weekend or something. And
oh my God, on the news this weekend. Oh, not the news. On the news this morning, they were showing a line at like a Dallas food bank.
And that was it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was like, it was. Oh my God, it was so long.
Yes, 25,000 people. 40% of them were new. 40%.
Wow.
And so, I think we got news this morning that Moderna's 94% effective vaccine is coming out. And I'm curious, because we talked about it a little bit on the show this morning, but get your thoughts on it. For me, presuming that everyone gets vaccinated by April, which I think is overly optimistic, but let's just say that's the case. At that point, then we can start to see what the quote new normal is going to be, but we'll still be a ways off before we understand what demand looks like for the various sectors. So we're still not, even if everyone takes the vaccine by April of next year, I'm not entirely sure we're going to get back to the 100 million barrel day mark by August or September. Maybe we will, but it seems that we're still got a ways to go. I mean, I think next year's, not $60 oil.
Yeah, but this is so bizarre because there's so much conflicting information coming from so-called experts, and at this point I say so-called experts because I'm not sure that who exactly we could, if anyone I consider an expert worth listening to at this point, but because you had Dr. Fauci going on TV saying, well, even when the vaccine is available, you still need a social distance. You still need to wear masks. And you've got, and then you hear that this vaccine, it's not like 94% effective at everything. You can still get coronavirus, but it'll be less severe, which seems to me like that's very similar to the flu vaccine, right? They never claim that the flu vaccine prevents you from ever getting the flu. You can get it, but they say it does make the flu way less bad if you do get it. So here you've got a vaccine that people could take where they could still get coronavirus, and maybe this is wrong, maybe we'll get more information to the contrary, but then you've got people saying, oh, and then you've got people who've already had the virus, which presumably should confer greater immunity than a vaccine, right? Like I like now you get to chickenpox vaccine, right? But like when I was a kid, we all got the chickenpox.
Right.
And like they wanted to, I didn't really like have the chickenpox so well. Like I had like a super, super mild case to the point where they weren't even sure I really had it. And finally they're like, well, maybe we should get the vaccine. I was like going off to college. And they're like, well, why don't we just check her titer levels and see if she's at, and it turns out, yeah. So like, but they're still telling people that had the coronavirus that you have to isolate if you're in contact.
Right.
So like there's so much conflicting information. And I think that a lot of this conflicting information and also a lot of the hypocrisy from officials who are in the spotlight is possibly going to contribute to sustaining this kind of state of being where we don't see demand jumping back because there's so much conflicting information and so much hypocrisy.
You know, I think that's what I'm getting to. I think just from a different angle is that when we get to April, if they say, okay, everyone's vaccinated in April, which it won't be, but let's just pretend in the best case scenario, there's 80% vaccinated, so you're at herd immunity. Then is it, well, you gotta get vaccinated again in 6 months, or is it, it's 3 years, 4 years, and I don't know if they've released that information, but I think even then you're kind of in, you're in jail when you go to parole or probation or whatever, then we go to probation, assuming that the vaccine works and it's out and it's not, it's everything it's cracked up to be. So we still have this probationary period that we had to go through before oil demand really kind of starts to potentially level back off to the previous demands. But that is not stopping the great folks in China. China economy continues strong growth trajectory in October, but imbalances remain. China's industrial production grew by 6.9% in October, year over year. On retail sales grew by 4.3%, and fixed asset investment grew by 1.8% year to date. Retail sales continue to lag industrial output, with consumers remaining cautious in their spending in the world's most populous nation. And I think that last statement is exactly what I will be looking for in the U.S. over Thanksgiving and Christmas.
But didn't you know Christmas is canceled?
It is canceled.
Thanksgiving, yeah, everything is canceled.
But
it's not part of cancel culture. That's only for individuals.
Yes, that's exactly right. But,
not to confuse anyone over the canceling here.
But we are just a few weeks away from Black Friday, right? So I'm assuming online Black Friday will be the rave.
I think online Black Friday has already started, judging from the emails I'm getting from sellers. Just saying.
So you have online Black Friday and you have Cyber Monday. So by that next Tuesday or Wednesday, you'll start to see the reports of how well Amazon and Walmart and Target did. If those numbers come in really low, I think you go back to demand and stuff like that. You're going to be looking at a bleak Christmas potentially. But just the realization that people won't be traveling, something you talked about, and they don't have money to spend right now. And I think, regardless of vaccine or no vaccine, if people don't have money to spend, they can't spend it. I know that's kind of a novel concept, but it's something that if you don't have it, you can't spend it unless you're the government. You can print it. So I think we're 2 or 3 weeks away, and we'll have some interesting indicators about where we're at. But yeah, I just don't see how, regardless of what's going on in China, I don't see how we get. I wouldn't be. I'm saying I don't see how we don't crack the $35 barrier again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting because I've been looking at like oil prices all summer, and they've really been incredibly stable. Like I always say, like when OPEC met, and I was like, they should really like take the win here because they managed to really help create a very, very stable oil market, which, yes, it's lower than they all wanted it to be, but it was so stable. And that's actually something that OPEC really likes. OPEC likes stable oil prices. They like to know what the price is going to be. They don't like a lot of fluctuation. And I think they didn't, quite pat themselves on the back enough for helping with that. But now we are, and so the question is, when is oil going to finally break out of this like little tiny range it's been in? And it seems like this is a breakout, except maybe, like you're saying, it's not. Maybe it's just going to plunge down again when everyone realizes that, yeah, the hype was cute and nice, but it was all in the stock market and the economy sucks.
Well, the count's going up in Texas again, right? And so,
yeah, well, so that's interesting too. I want to ask about that too, which is, we've seen sustained rig count increase over, the past like 2 months basically, or since like October. I think we've seen sustained increases. Which is, at first it could have, you weren't quite sure, but now that you're looking at it, like it's definitely sustained increases, but we're still so far from where we were in like March. Is that enough oil? If you combine that with the ducts that are being accessed, of course, is that enough to even maintain current rates of production?
well, yeah, I mean, we had on someone from Pickering a while back, and they said that the amount to maintain production to drill is not that much. DRW actually put a thing on the ducks, and here's his last paragraph. He said there was a tremendous amount of drilled but uncompleted opportunities. The bolter cash flow and drilling serves no logical purpose for many companies operating in the basin. I thought 2020 was a year of growth. It appears we're set for more of the same. And so he is pretty critical of the fact. We talked about that last week or two, like, why are they not, turn the ducks on? Why are the ducks not being depleted? Why are they drilling? And so he's seems to be as frustrated about that as well. And I'll make sure we link to this in the show notes if people want to read his hot take of the day on the ducks. But yeah, I don't, I feel, to your point, the Pickering guys, I think it said it's like 25% of the rigs, or I can't remember what it was, like 25% of the rigs that were used to get to production or needed to maintain production, I think is what it was. It wasn't that many. And so you couple that with
Interesting.
yeah, you would think that you'd be able to keep production relatively high. So what do you make of this China data though?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think it's not the whole picture for China.
Mhm.
I really do. You can't. First of all, we know that you can't take their data at face value, and so I think the imbalances are really the key here. Retail sales lagging is a serious issue, and I think shows a lot about what the Chinese people think about their economy. Industrial data can be, I mean, is essentially like government. The government says build this factory, they build the factory. So industrial output can look great, but China is in the process of shifting to a consumer economy, and if retail output is lagging, that means either people are worried that they're not going to have enough money to pay for things, or they don't want to go out and buy things. And both of those are concerning. And at the same time, we've got this like weird idea that somehow Asia has like defeated or vanquished the coronavirus, whereas the US and Europe is just like languishing um, in incompetence. And I don't think that that is the case. And I think that these statistics or this data, for what we can take of it, shows us that China is not all there.
So did you see the headline that Biden, that Beijing rather, is putting out the feelers that they're going to want to renegotiate the phase one trade deal?
Oh God.
Yeah, and
Oh, that's just what we need. We spent like 2 years talking about, is there going to be a trade deal? Is there not? The market going like the lot great. Like we finally had the trade deal like settled, and like actually things were being bought, and like there's a lot of U.S. energy going to China. A lot of people are banking on that, and like now they want to renegotiate it. Way to throw more instability into the
right,
picture.
that would be right. So you talk about next year. I don't know if Biden will have the political capital to renegotiate the trade deal. So there's like this. If you look at, and if you remind me, I'll send you this report. There's a report about how far off the pace we are from actually meeting the trade deal goals. So Biden might can come in and say, "Listen, it's a bad deal. It's not working. We need to start over." That's possible. But at some point, you know, do we get to the point where we say, "Okay, hey, if the U.S. and China do pull out of the trade deal within, we signed it in January, within 16 to 18 months, that would add I would imagine an element of instability to the market where you're kind of always watching, U.S. China news might actually trigger the prices to react a little bit more strongly. But more importantly for U.S. companies, if the U.S. and China break apart from the phase one trade deal, that's not good for prices, I don't think. I mean, they bought a lot of U.S. oil this year.
Yeah, I think that's a big, big question that probably isn't being asked enough given all the other things that are being talked about with the incoming changing of the guard, whatever you want to call it.
Transition to the second Trump administration.
I mean, come on, people are like, where are Biden and Harris? Like, where are they?
They're meeting with GM today, I think I saw.
Oh, they're meeting with GM so that she can talk all about all of the great new electric vehicles they're going to produce that nobody wants to buy, except apparently in Quebec. Maybe Quebec will be a huge customer because they're going to ban the sale of new internal combustion engines by 2035. So.
Well, there you go. So real quick, you mentioned OPEC. They're extending their cuts, or there's at least their technical meeting, which isn't binding, right?
No.
They want to extend their cuts and through to beginning or through January, or which one it was. So it's a 3-month extension if it happens. They're meeting here relatively soon. Does it mean?
Yeah, I think they had their. I think they had their JTC meeting today, and the JMMC, which is the ministerial one, is tomorrow, and so and then they're going to meet. They're going to have their regular meeting November 30th.
Okay. So how does this factor in with Libya passing 1 million barrels per day in oil? They're up. I don't know if you saw that or not. They're up again.
Yeah, I think that well, now there's some indication that maybe it won't last.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not really talking about that much, which is interesting. Apparently, so compliance is down to I think 96%, they say. I mean, Libya came out last week with a pretty strong statement saying basically we're not even going to talk about entering these cuts until we hit 1.7 for a sustained amount of time. On the other hand, Libya is still not doing so great. Does the fact that Libya has buyers for its oil tell us something, though, about the market?
Well, our next story about the pirates might answer that question. So, but okay, just real quick. So, if compliance is down and Libya is going up, and we're about to have more lockdowns, we're already seeing them in Europe. We're about to see them more in the U.S. How does that not bode terrible for oil prices? I don't like. It seems like the perfect storm.
I've been saying this, and then I get people like I wrote last week in my investing.com column that oil prices are basically divorced from the reality of supply and demand right now. And they gave it this very unfortunate headline, which was something like the vaccine fantasy or something, which made a lot of people yeah. I had to, the number of times I have to explain to people that writers don't write their own headlines. The editor gives it a headline. What am I supposed to do?
Hey, the editor gave me this headline.
Yeah. I mean, basically, I have to I did not write the headline. Don't take it out on me. Here, I'm going to read the headline because it was just so. Investing.com, I love you guys, but sometimes the headlines you give me really suck and get me into trouble. Here, this was the headline that they gave for me. Oil prices rise on vaccine fantasy, but fundamental reality less stable.
Oh yeah, that's gonna get you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I got comments that went from this: irresponsible for you to refer to vaccine as a fantasy. The election is over. It's okay to root for an improving economy. You are not really a very intelligent person, despite the PhD, and all you've done is trash oil all year. It's pretty apparent that you are part of the green energy brigade. You are permanently negative on oil. Oh, here, wait, this is even better. This National Enquirer, her and this other guy named Bharani Krishnan write for Sell Doom and Gloom, Not Facts. She should get her money back on that PhD. It was free. What are you suggesting? Wait until oil is at 70, then buy? Investing.com is tabloids.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, we could have like a whole podcast where I just read the ridiculous comments that I get.
I'll make you feel better. So I sent out an email. We'll blame the editor for the headline. Don't ask who the editor is, but it's Scranton Joe question mark.
There's an editor up there.
Yeah, there's an editor somewhere. Scranton Joe, I don't think so. And so I just wrote a piece. It was about, I don't know, 1,200 words, detailing how much money that Biden makes, how much he pays in taxes, and how much he took from super PACs. And there's a Wall Street Journal article that kind of poked my curiosity about how many people will get jobs in the administration because of that. And so I'm pointing out simply that this whole Scranton Joe thing is silly. Like, he's not Scranton Joe. He's a big time money making guy. And then I just threw in 2 links that said why billionaires love Kamala Harris. So, I mean, obviously, my typical style is kind of making fun of stuff, but I mean, I threw a little shot at Trump just to be fair and balanced. So someone sit back, unsubscribe, 4 spaces, capital me, capital M-E, all caps, immediately from your rag. Hopefully you can get a real job somewhere in Orange Man's fantasy world.
Wow.
Now, this was 2 days after I said I didn't think Trump had much of a case for the re-election. So, I mean, for the voter fraud. So, I've just kind of learned that those are the best marketing tools I have. Like, I need more of that because I can put that out there and then people might want to come read. So,
wow. Yeah.
Now that you're part of the Green Brigade, I will be reading your stuff more regularly. I did not know. I know you for a little while now. I didn't know that. But anyways, who is not part of the Green Brigade?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, I gotta read you this line. So, mounting piracy off of Gulf of Guiana settles tanker owners. Okay, so I gotta read you this line. It's going down here. Where is it at? Oh gosh, I had it highlighted. I moved it so I could read the headline. This is great podcasting. I can't find it, Ellen. Oh, wait. Yes, a large portion of the attacks involved kidnapping crew members for ransom, but pirates have also siphoned the oil to another vessel to be sold on the local black market. I want video of this now. Like, could you imagine siphoning the oil?
We need to put Samir needs to put his satellites on that. Oh, that would be awesome.
Think about, like, I don't know what's involved, but that's a big hose. Like, I mean, just stop and do some math here. Like, how much? So to siphon the oil, you got to pump it out of the tanker into the new ship. So you got to do some kind of pump to start pumping, right? Okay, and then you got to have a pretty big. Like, that's a pretty.
I think after this podcast, I'm gonna go and ask our friendly neighborhood guy who watches people do this on ship to ship transfers.
Yeah.
Like, do they like drill a hole in? Like, is this like old school? Like they drill,
I just read that. I was like, they're siphoning the oil. Like that sounds like an impressive operation. Like, that's SEAL Team 6 over there. So anyways,
these guys mean business. They do piracy right.
I mean,
make piracy great again.
They're trying to. So the tax are up 20% in 2020. I mean, up 40% in 2020. What was your interest in this article? I should say, because mine was
I like pirates. It was either that or this article from In Style that says that unmarried women with no kids are the healthiest and happiest population subgroup, says expert. So I figured we should probably stick with pirates.
I can't comment on that one. It's not my demographic.
Men, on the other hand, apparently get much happier when they get married. So,
well, I've been married 14 years and am extremely happy. So there you go.
On the other hand, these pirates how happy are they? I think we need to ask this.
I'm still stunned by the fact they're siphoning the oil. Like I just, I mean, that's impressive. That's just impressive. Like, to pull it off.
And that they haven't blown themselves up yet.
So we need to get a shipping guy on here, or shipping gal. You would think at this point with the pirate stuff, I know it kind of dropped down for a little bit. But you would think these boats would be able to put on like armed guys with AK-47s and rocket launchers to protect their ships. Like, I mean,
I think they don't care because they just get the insurance. Like, I don't know.
well, I,
Six incidents. 6 incidents in the first half of November.
okay, but seriously, like, so if a little pirate ship comes up and you sink it, and then you just go on about your business, and you don't tell anybody, did it really happen?
Hmm.
Like I'm being facetious, but all seriousness, like, why do they not protect their ships better than this? I don't understand that. You think it's just insurance just
Hmm.
easy to collect on?
Yeah, I think also I think a lot of these are refined products,
They
so
are.
they're much smaller ships than like the big, they're not like hijacking VLCCs.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm wondering, okay, so 3 million barrels a day of oil and refined products pass through the Gulf of Guinea. Do we know what the Gulf of Guinea is, by the way? Have we looked that up? I only have a map of the Middle East on my wall. So anyway, wherever the Gulf of Guinea is,
Yeah,
it's probably somewhere around Africa, right?
right. So it's gonna. I'm trying to get this. So I went like 4 maps deep. Yeah, so it's gonna be in there by Cameroon, Nigeria,
Okay.
all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently, 3 million barrels per day on average of oil and refined products passed through the Gulf of Guinea in 2016, which is 3% of global maritime trade.
Mm,
That's not insignificant.
right.
Um, but yeah, so I'm thinking that I think it says that also there's always a steady stream of tankers carrying refined oil products. The UK continent to West Africa route for clean tankers, those carrying refined oil products, have been a lucrative business for tanker owners. Yeah, I don't know why. And the pirates just have guns and knives.
That's what I'm saying.
It's
Like
not
you're
like they have like cannons or
right. They're not coming in
whatever we used to do.
with the what's those helicopters that the U.S. has, the Black Hawk helicopters, and they're landing in, and
Yeah.
they're taking them at night, and they're planting mines. Yes, it's. I mean, they're siphoning, so that's impressive. But other than that, you would think you could deter them relatively easily. I don't understand. There's got to be some kind of maritime law that prevents them from actively protecting themselves. I don't.
Hmm.
I don't.
I don't know. Maybe we should get someone on and we should ask these questions. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll.
see if your tanker tracker buddy will come.
Yeah. All right. Let's see what we can do to get some answers to these piracy questions because it's important to know.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the pirate stories originally were on the east side of Africa. Now we're on the west side of Africa. So I don't know if it's a different scheme there or whatever. But the Tom Hanks movie, I think, was based upon the Captain Phillips was based upon the attack on the eastern coast. And up next, making his, I guess, next to last appearance, or maybe last appearance, I don't know if he'll be on in December, is Dr. Dean Foreman with the American Petroleum Institute. Dr. Foreman, will we see you next month? Will you be back to close out the year?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look forward to it.
Good. So next to last appearance, then, and this is going over the report that will be out on the 19th, the monthly statistical report. Dr. Foreman, we'll let you take the floor. Tell us what stood out to you. We've talked before you got on about numbers and all the mixed signals. So tell us on this report what stuck out to you.
Glad to. So, we survey 90% of the industry each week, and we come out with these numbers, faster than the market average. We're a couple of months ahead of EIA. And what it shows is that, let's start with demand. 18.8 million barrels per day for October. That's continued recovery. And we've had weeks in November here where last week it was actually over 20 million barrels per day. So this is a lot higher than what people generally believe to be the case, and is higher than you might expect. And in the past, where we've been saying 80% of this is motor gasoline and people driving instead of flying or taking public transit, here we saw big pickups in things like more than 10% on the month in jet fuel, and also diesel fuel. So pretty broad. And then a quarter of all demand in the US is petrochemical related, refining and petrochemical. So naphtha, gas oil going into this industrial part of the sector. And it also performs strongly for the month. So that's a pretty good sign that as inventories are getting drawn down, that there's an underlying need for this on the demand side. Now, supply's been a different story, and it's been a really rough patch this year for the industry. I think the thing that's remarkable is we've got a really low rig count, both on the oil and the natural gas side. The activity is low, yet here we have production increasing. And granted that we've got some crawlbacks in the number of rigs that are being deployed by small quantities off of a low base. But here we had US crude oil production basically hold steady, natural gas production at a record high, natural gas liquids production at a record high, and natural gas production continuing to be solid per EIA. So on the supply side, this says these record productivity estimates that EIA has been producing in its drilling productivity report look pretty darn good. And it's not going to take 1,000 rigs to maintain this production. As we continue to crawl back from 200 to 300 oil rigs and another 70 to 80 gas rigs, if this productivity holds up, we're in really good shape to participate in an economic recovery when it comes. On the refining side, we got first month of a reading without having hurricanes intervening, and that was pretty good. So back to 75% capacity utilization, not great by any means, but it's progress. And then I think the thing that kind of sticks, and it is the biggest long-term message, is that we had the lowest crude oil imports since 1990 last month. Wow. I mean, that's our fourth consecutive month, by the way, where the U.S. has been a petroleum net exporter. So with that and some normalization continuing on the inventory side, there wasn't really a weak indicator among it. Are they knocking out of the ballpark? No, this isn't 2019 and the kind of statistics where we were setting record after record, but there are a couple in there. And it does say that we've got a continued recovery in place if we read the body of everything we see.
Okay, so since we last spoke, I've flown from Dallas to Milwaukee, then from Chicago to Cleveland, Cleveland to Philly, Baltimore to Dallas, Dallas to DC, and back. Okay,
so it was you.
It was me, yeah.
Ryan is entirely responsible for the increase in jet fuel.
So I want to talk about the jet fuel because before I flew, people were like, "Oh man, the planes are full," and except for one or two flights, the planes were 75. I guess 75% full. I didn't really take that much time, but one was kind of sparse, but most of them were full. However, when you go through security, I only had to wait in line, like at the TSA, not going to taking all your stuff off, but at TSA, I think one time through all of those airports. Some of the airports I landed at lunchtime and they had places shut down. So my takeaway, which is not based upon the numbers, so what I asked you was, okay, the planes are full because there's less planes. Like that's why, and thank God they're full. Otherwise, we'd really be in bad shape. But reading these numbers, are we seeing more planes, longer flights? Can you account for why these numbers are up? Because I wasn't surprised by what I saw. I was actually a little bit more disturbed. Now I see this, I'm like, okay, well maybe it is better than what I was thinking.
So we do track flight radar and the TSA passenger traffic, and there's not a resounding difference in what we saw for October versus September to be able to compare to the fuel data. The thing that probably is the case is that as the inventories, if we specifically look at jet fuel inventories for that month, they were down almost 15%. Month on month. So, I mean, that's a pretty big drawdown. It says that that needs to be replenished. And that's why on the fuel delivery side, we're seeing this pickup despite not a commensurate pickup on the passenger side. So we'll see how it plays out. The vaccine news this week is what's more indicative of where travel might go in the next year. Jet fuel as of the month was still down 40% year on year. So it is probably the most impacted fuel on a percentage basis. But the good news is with the 10% plus increase this last month, it's back above 1 million barrels per day. And it started, we were talking record levels of over 1.8 million barrels per day at the beginning of this.
Right. And my concern about the airline industry, you brought up the vaccine, is it would not surprise me to see the national governments to come to our country, you had to have a COVID-19 vaccination, which could really hamper international travel as you get into mid-year to late year 2021. Folks who can't travel, who want to travel because they can't get the vaccine yet, or they got to get 2 vaccinations, depending on what's going on. So that's kind of something I've been thinking about. I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but a kind of a narrative to maybe watch. I know you can't make predictions going into next year. Now, you brought up the production. Let's go back to that, the production increase in the U.S. You said it was up, I can't remember what it was. It was up a few rigs, and we've looked at the numbers. But Elle and I were talking, and I think Pickering had a report on on the Texas Oil and Gas podcast we covered a while back, and I think they were saying like 25% of the original capacity in these horizontal plays is all you have to get to kind of maintain production. Is that kind of what you were saying a minute ago, where once the rig counts drop, to kind of keep the production at the same level, you don't have to get back up to that level? Do you kind of have a range that we of rig count we had to see it in to maintain current production levels?
I haven't tried to bracket it exactly. I have updated a rig pulse model and tried to look at what this implies for overall production. And you're right, it's not going to take, if you run current rig levels forward, you'd still have some decline, but the lower drilling activity ultimately does catch up despite the high productivity that we've got here. If 2015 and 16 are any lesson, not all of this productivity gain will stick. Some of it will backslide as things normalize a bit. And that's a good thing, because you've got a broader base than contributing. And right now you have very selective drilling using the best rigs and crews that are left, and really drilling the most prospective targets that can be tied in relatively inexpensively to existing infrastructure. So we'll see how it plays. But right now, we will have some reactivity that continues to creep back so long as the market's there. The question is, we've seen in the last couple of weeks where both the IEA and OPEC have lowered their demand outlooks, and they weren't the most bullish to start with. The EIA has actually, I think, been pretty realistic in terms of where it's been going, but even with the sentiment shifting for oil this last month, they also dialed back. So they had previously 6.5 million barrels per day of growth going in the next year. Now it's a little under 6 million barrels per day. It's still a lot. And when you add 6 million barrels per day of resumed growth plus the natural decline, you could take pretty much every barrel that was taken off the market this year between OPEC and non-OPEC, and you still need more. So that is a sign that the investment climate, again, barring anything short of lockdowns for COVID-19 that really derail the economy, and we are seeing some of that, not just in the US, but worldwide, where people are trying to get things back on track and control the transmission of COVID-19. But maybe it becomes moot in 6 or 9 months, where you've got the ramp up of what appears to be an effective vaccine treatment. So we'll see how it goes.
One more for me, and I'll let Ellen hop in here. We were talking briefly about, there's reports out of China that Beijing might want to get out of the phase 1 trade deal under the Biden administration. I know you can't predict, but looking back, when we look at these numbers, how much has the phase 1 trade deal with China impacted what we're seeing here, and what would look different if we didn't have that in place? I know they haven't started, so we can't. It should be better theoretically, but it is what it is.
The Peterson Institute of Economics does an excellent job of tracking the broad progress on the trade deal. And here's the thing. This trade deal was never really necessary. It became necessary because you had some severe trade frictions with China. The hope is that the administration will diffuse some of those trade things, and then, as opposed to volumetric commitments where nobody was really sure how this was going to work anyway, where in a market-based economy, how do you dedicate that there are going to be certain volumetric commitments that one country must buy? Here, if we go back to a market basis, it really doesn't matter for crude oil or refined products where China buys it. Every barrel that they consume is a barrel that's needed globally, and it's fungible and it can move around. So look, the market will work, and they've been so far behind in compliance with that trade deal, it really isn't likely to have a material impact. The thing where maybe it's been the meeting of the minds. Liquefied natural gas likely would have happened anyway, but so much with terminals and trains starting up in the US. EIA is projecting that this month, we'll have 8.5 billion cubic feet per day of LNG exports. That's a record. And that's a record coming off of incredibly weak pricing and weak demand just 4 months ago, right, over the summer. So this is a really good sign for the resilience of global gas markets in addition to oil markets, and showing that the demand for power and the demand for natural gas to feed it is really strong globally. So I think there are reasons to be optimistic, and China will play an important part of that.
I want to piggyback on that natural gas, kind of where we left it with the LNG, and talk a little bit about natural gas. But first, I want to tell a little story. See what you think about this. So this happened, I think it was 2013. Yeah, I was at a job interview at the University of Houston for a position that was supposed to be about the history of oil, which is like my dream job. Turned out they didn't hire anyone in history of oil, but I had a job interview and I had a chance to have dinner with a bunch of historians, one of whom is kind of a renowned like economic oil historian who was writing a history of Exxon. And we were talking about the state of LNG at that point. So oil was really high, it was like 127 a barrel. And there was, the shale revolution was everything, this Texas, everyone's talking about, we need to be able to ship this LNG. We need to be able to send it abroad because, there's so much natural gas, and there was issue with, can you send it to countries that we don't have free trade agreements with, and they wanted the Obama administration to approve these permits. And I remember, discussing this at dinner, and the guy said, look, it's not going to happen. They're not going to approve these, permits, and because there was so much pressure to get this natural gas out. And now it's 2020, and we are finally exporting this natural gas. And it like throws me back to that conversation where everyone thought this was going to happen. And he was like, I don't think it's going to happen so fast. And, I think we've come a long way from that time. And we're talking about like, we're on the shale revolution, like 3.0, but in some respects, we're still following through with what happened back then in terms of, permitting for these LNG terminals and the amount of natural gas we're sending out. It's, I don't know, I think it's really quite incredible, but here's the question. That was the story. Here's the question. So Bloomberg has an article that says that natural gas prices or futures are way down because they're predicting like a not so cold winter of some sort. But what are we, when we're thinking about how natural gas is now becoming much more of a global commodity, how do we square that with, with this new LNG market and export industry that we now have in the U.S.? Maybe it's good that our natural gas prices are down. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, trying to trap cheap hydrocarbons at home was always the opposition. Back in the era with your interview, that was the time when many of the chemical companies were actively lobbying, saying, look, our competitiveness depends on having these low prices. And what they didn't really understand, and what they vastly miscalculated, was that what you're exporting is dry gas, and the things that you really need for petrochemicals, the ethane, have to be removed to export that dry gas. And so petchem has actually had quite a boon as a result of this, where ethane prices are down. It is demonstrably true that even though our exports have increased 10 and 20-fold over this period, over the last several years, we've seen natural gas prices hit some historic lows this year. So there hasn't been this normal relationship where you'd expect if you dramatically increase the demand from an external standpoint, that it's necessarily going to drive prices up, or in this environment with shale being so prolific, put you into a higher end of the cost curve. In economic lingo, our supply curve is pretty flat here, and it's showing that we can produce an awful lot for what appears to be an awfully long period of time at relatively low prices. And the stuff that was considered, the very best 5 years ago is at best tier 2 or 3 today. Our recovery factors and our productivity, this is EIA's estimate, right, showing that the productivity continues to rise for it. So then you question, okay, well, how big can it get? How much can we really export before it does begin to affect domestic prices? And you can imagine that there has to be some natural limit to this. I mean, how far can you push it? And I don't know exactly where that limit is. It does appear that we're not close to it, but EIA's estimate in the short-term energy outlook had us going back above $3 per million BTU. Futures markets have been there recently. Day to day, we can get stories that say it's up or down depending upon winter seasonality. And even though it's a pretty prolific world for natural gas, the seasonality of winter and the shoulder season going into winter is always a source of a lot of speculation and movement in the financial futures for these things. We've seen it jump, and if we go back a week or two, we had a day when it was at 250 per million BTU, another where it was close to 150 per million BTU. It got back to 2, and now this last week it's been 250, 260, 270. At that range where you start approaching $3 per million BTU, most of the power models would say that you start to claw back some market share for coal, where it backs out. It depends where, but that's really been EIA's short-term energy outlook of projecting higher prices above $3 per million BTU to stick, and then backing some natural gas out of the power sector because of that. That also, by the way, frees up some natural gas that is otherwise produced that can go internationally. And as long as the international market is healthy, and you've got European prices that have reemerged at twice North American prices and Asian prices that are roughly 3 times North American prices. As that happens, that net back margin is there to be able to export North American natural gas at $3 per million BTU in a healthy way. So right now, the pieces fit together. It doesn't say if it grew too fast that there couldn't be a miscalculation. But I think it is a growing market that's continuing to go. And the production, as it's clear what the international demand for this is, and it becomes more stable as it goes up that learning curve, and you understand more about that it's not in a nascent phase, that it's a more mature commercial relationship, then domestic supply can respond to that demand and really continue to flesh out drilling programs that match both for the competitiveness into the power sector domestically as well as internationally. So I think it's working, but it's just going to go through some learning steps along the way. Great question. Thank you.
I know we're getting up against the clock, Dr. Foreman. I know you don't like making predictions, but can you possibly give us a range of how many turkeys you will cook during Thanksgiving?
I wish I could say it's more than 0, but my family and I, we like Thanksgiving a lot, but we're
don't
not
tell me
big
you're
turkey
vegetarians.
Not absolutely not.
No, it's okay to be vegetarian.
With an Italian background, though, I might venture for Italian.
Oh well. Hey, are y'all taking guests at Thanksgiving? Might need to fly in. I didn't know. That was, I love The Sopranos, but the hardest part of watching it was when Tony would go to the fridge and he'd just get out all those cuts of meat, and he'd start eating. I'm like, I need some Italian blood in me just to eat all those salamis and all those meats. I love all those meats. Well, Dr. Foreman, wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving, and we will talk to you between now, I guess, late or mid-December. And so curious to see what is going on. This report comes out Thursday. Any other events or reports or anything else that you want to plug or promote before we get you out of here today?
Well, next month we'll come out with our quarterly outlook in addition to our monthly. So, yeah.
We like the quarterly reports here.
We will have a lot of new material this time, and there's certainly lots to dig into.
Okay. Dr. Foreman, thank you as always, and we'll talk to you next month.
Great seeing you both. Thanks.
And once again, Dr. Dean Foreman with the API. Report comes out on Thursday. We'll link to the Chief Economist blog in the show notes. Ms. Wald, where will you be this week?
Well, I will be on investing.com fielding, disparaging comments, and also on Forbes this week.
Okay. I will be over at the War Room newsletter, warroommedia.com, and I will be right here in this podcast with Ms. Wald. And we'll be back next week. And until then, hope everyone has a great week. And listen. Have a good Thanksgiving. If you go ahead and make your plans. Don't let the lockdowns keep you from having a good Thanksgiving. Just my 2 cents.
Yes.